Happy Friday to you. And of course, we had 49ers 49ers offensive weapon, Kyle Juszczyk, on the show. And he told us tight end George Kittle likes his theatrics. And there's no reason why we should doubt Kittle being on the field for Sunday's NFC Championship game against the Packers. Now, Kittle is dealing with an ankle injury that sidelined him for Wednesday's practice, but he was a full participant on Thursday. He was asked about his ankle, and Kittle responded, quote, "I feel fabulous. Thanks for asking." Never change, George. Never change. Well, Kittle is a major focus of the 49ers offense, but as he explained, this, my friends, is a balanced attack.
The balance is always there, but he's never afraid to run power on back-to-back plays to score a touchdown. I mean, we ran on 3rd and 2 for a 10-yard gain, and we scored on the exact same play, just flipped it the next play. So, it's just fun to be a part of an offense like that where, we have all the, the fun stuff like we did versus the Saints, the passes, and, Emmanuel's pass to, Raheem, but we'll run power down your throat if we want to.
Well, Kittle's teammate, quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, making his second career playoff start, and he's doing so against a familiar foe in the Week 12 win over the Packers. He had a career-high 145.8 passer rating. Green Bay has a better idea of what to expect from him this time around, as Darius and Preston Smith know they have to put the pressure on him.
We're the guys who basically put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And it worked hand in hand, man. If the coverage on the back end is locking those guys down, man, we'll be able to execute and get home up front. So we feel like that's the number one thing.
Yeah, we just have to go in here and not let them get comfortable back there, get in rhythm, and get the ball to his guys. We can't allow him to get – he has a lot of playmakers, a lot of talented guys on that offense. And we got to make sure we apply pressure and don't let him get comfortable throws off or let him get in rhythm or get in the flow making big plays for his team.
I love that they both hang out for interviews. By the way, with the win, Garoppolo would join Hall of Famers Joe Montana and Steve Young as the only quarterbacks in 49ers history with 15-plus wins in a season, including the playoffs. And as Kyle Juszczyk said, January Jim is who we are looking at, but they have a big, big matchup on Sunday.
I love it. January Jim. He might be February fine, too.
Appreciate you, Will. Time for some Would You Rather. A couple sleeps away from the conference championships. And I want to talk about Ryan Tannehill. It's crazy to think that in one quarter, in the second quarter, Patrick Mahomes threw 4 touchdowns. Tannehill has 3 in 2 playoff games combined. He threw for 160 yards total in his 2 playoff wins. The Titans quarterback talked about how much he's been throwing the ball this week.
Being a quarterback, obviously, I love throwing the ball, but I just want to win. At the end of the day, that's what we go out there each and every week, is to find a way to win and do whatever it takes. So if that's throwing it 15 times and trying to execute those plays, then that's what I'll do. If it's 35, then that's what it is.
So would you rather, guys, on Sunday see Ryan Tannehill throw the ball 35 times or have Derrick Henry, the king, run the ball 35 times?
Yeah, let me break the fourth wall right now. When this question was posed, I went to Matt Hamilton, our super producer and researcher, and I said, give me the numbers of Ryan Tannehill throwing the ball 35-plus times this season so I can get up here and I can just speak glowingly about Ryan Tannehill using his arm. He gives me the notes. This year he's 0-2 when throwing the ball 35-plus times. Yeah.
Really?
9-1, including the postseason when he throws less than 35. So let me just keep it all the way real and not be overdramatic. Let's just hand the ball off to Derrick Henry.
Yeah, look, Kyle talked about this earlier in the week. If you guys don't know about Derrick Henry's high school career, you gotta Google it.
It ain't fair. What do you mean, Trace?
It ain't fair. Yulee High School in Florida, the senior season, ran for 4,260 yards and 55 rushing touchdowns as a senior. This is not new to Derrick Henry. This is a guy that for his entire life has been toting the ball 30 times a game, has been asked to carry a team. In the team's final game, after 45 career games, Henry went for 510 yards against Jackson High School. Imagine you're a fantasy footballer and you got a running back who goes for 510. I say all this because he then goes to Alabama and puts up crazy numbers there with a lot of carries, and now is doing it at the highest level. This is nothing new to him. Give it to him 35 times, give it to him 40 times, give it to him 45 times, and if you need to, Give it to him 55 times.
Sure.
I think if the Titans are going to beat the Chiefs on Sunday, it's going to be about Derrick Henry, the pride of Yulee High School, taking care of business.
His high school highlight tape looks like it was produced by Marvel. I mean, honestly, it's a very ridiculous thing. It's very simple. You want him to run, obviously. I think Marcus Mariota is going to throw a pass in this game.
Okay.
Derrick Henry threw a pass in the last game. Guys, don't sleep on this. Brett Kern, the Titans punter, has thrown passes in his career. Kevin Byard, their safety, has thrown passes on special teams.
That's
and
right.
emptying the bag to beat the Chiefs, it's going to be people other than Tannehill passing. I guarantee it. Ooh.
You three are crazy brothers. I look at you guys like brothers, you know, at the table. It's like brothers in the AFC Championship game. The Packers and Niners both have a pair of feared pass rushers. Would you rather have the Smith brothers, Preston and Zadarius, or Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead rushing the quarterback for your team, Kyle?
2-on-2, I say it's an absolute push, but I'm going to go with the Niners because of who their other brothers that they're bringing. We're not even saying Ford. We're not even saying DeForest. If you look at the Niners for Bosa, Armstead, Buckner, Ford, guys, that's sounding a lot like Strahan, Tuck, Kiwanuka, and Osi. I mean, you cannot get better than that four. I'm going to go with the Niners.
It's so funny you say that because you look at the combination of their 4 defensive linemen, and you could say it's, Bosa and Armstead.
Yeah.
Kyle, you're right. I might go Ford and Buckner as my guys over those
two waves. I know.
There's so many pass rushers that it's not just a brother, it's a family of guys coming. Love what the Smith brothers have done in 2 great free agent signings. But this 49ers front 7 is something else. I would go with the Niners.
Okay, the Niners might seem like the scariest, but I'm going with Preston and Zadarius. Here's the thing, man. They lead in every statistical category, including the playoffs. We're talking sacks, QB hits, and what I love most, a number that people don't really look at a lot, QB pressures. It's 114 to 91. So you can look at Bosa and Armstead. That's cool. That's fine. But when you look at what these guys do to quarterbacks, they made Russell Wilson feel uncomfortable. I've never seen Russell Wilson get hit by so many blindside shots ever. And I said it on the show that Russell Wilson is the best in the pocket all time.
He had his shots to win the game.
And he was shocked in that game. So I'm going with the Green Bay Packers and what they bring.
What do you think out there at GMFB? With that, Kyle, I have a question that only you can answer. I'm going to show you something right now. Is this right here an angry run?
Okay, not only is the answer a resounding yes, I'm trying to track down that individual to give them a crown because damn did they earn it. Oh,
Definitely
yes.
You can accept that. And we're talking to an owner next about all the new coaching hires. Happy Friday and welcome back to Good Morning Football. All of the coaching vacancies are now full in the NFL with Kevin Stefanski being officially hired as the Browns head coach. Here's a look at the new men who will be in charge and where they are headed. Ron Rivera, Mike McCarthy previously held head coaching positions, of course. Meanwhile, it'll be the first head coaching job for Stefanski for Matt Rule. And for Joe Judge, the coaching carousel this year drew some attention for the lack of diversity among the candidates hired. And for more on the coaching hires, here's our very own Steve Weish.
Hi, we are now joined by Art Rooney II, the principal owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Mr. Rooney, thank you so much for joining us because this conversation is important. And you reached out to us because your family name is attached to a rule that is supposed to increase diversity in hiring with coaches, general managers. But we've seen what's happened over the past few years. You've seen what's happened as the NFL celebrates its 100th season. We've got 1 general manager of color, 4 head coaches of color. Of course, one of them is yours, and Mike Tomlin. And I just want to get your thoughts on the state of affairs in that category right now.
You know, Steve, thanks first for having me on to talk about an important subject. And as you said, I think where we are right now is not where we want to be, not where we need to be. And we need to take a step back and look at what's happening with our hiring processes. The first thing we'll do as part of our diversity committee is really review this past season's hiring cycle and make sure we understand what went on and talk to the people involved, both on the owner's side, management side, as well as the people that were interviewed. And then I think, the thing I think we have to look at is back when the Rooney Rule was passed and put into effect in 2003, there was a period there where we did see an increase in minority hiring at the head coach position. And I think over a period of time, there were 10 or 12 minority coaches hired. Since then, that trend seems to have reversed itself, particularly in the last few years. And so we need to study what's going on and understand better what's going on and really decide how we improve the situation.
Well, as you said, you're the chairman of the Minority Workplace Committee. Would you ever recommend mandating change? Would you ever say you have to do something such as increasing the number of minority candidates that are interviewed for head coaching jobs or general manager jobs? Instead of just speaking to one, you have to speak to multiple candidates. Could you force your fellow owners to do something like that?
You know, we'll look at a lot of different things. In fact, this time last year, we made some changes to the Rooney Rule, and we required the interview to come from somebody outside the organization because we didn't want it just to be an internal situation where somebody down the hall was called down to the office for an interview. So that we changed that rule last year. Obviously, we have to look at what we can do, differently now, and perhaps even expand the Rooney Rule into some of the lower levels, perhaps the coordinator level, just to make sure that the minority opportunities are there.
All right, Mr. Rooney, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Again, Art Rooney, the principal owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the chairman of the NFL's Workplace Diversity Committee.
Excellent work, as always, from Steve Wyche there. And you heard from Art Rooney saying, quote, "I think where we are right now is not where we want to be." How do you feel about the coaching hires in all of this, Nate?
Well, there's definitely a lack of representation of African Americans when it comes to coaches being hired. And this is year after year. Now, here's the thing. Let me be very transparent. I understand both sides of it. I understand the side where you can sit back and say, well, if I'm running a business, I can hire whoever I want to run my business for me. White, black, it doesn't matter. I get that side of it. But let me tell you how the players think about it. I'm talking about guys that look like me. The league is 70% black. So when you look at head coaches, GMs, ownership, we don't see guys that look like us. And it's odd because as so many talented individuals that pass through these doors of the NFL, they can't make that leap up to be a head coach, to be a GM, to be an owner. If you consider last year's MVP, Pat Mahomes, this year's MVP, Lamar Jackson, and even consider Cam Newton a handful of years ago, that's 3 black quarterbacks that are MVPs in the last 6 years. The reason I bring that up, not to highlight black quarterbacks, is to tell you that at one point, there was the thought that a black quarterback couldn't lead an NFL team. And now here we are, so many years later, you see the impact that African-American quarterbacks can have. I feel like at some point, organizations, maybe even ownership, maybe even fan bases should take the same approach and say, you know what, we should give a guy an opportunity, like a Flores down in Miami. You see what he did this year. Mike Tomlin, with everything that he did with the drama from AB, guys being gone, Big Ben being hurt, and still almost made the playoffs. You look at Eric Bieniemy, who's been part of one of the most prolific offenses over the last couple of years with the Kansas City Chiefs, yet and still, he's not hired as a head coach yet. So that's how I feel about it. The representation from what African-American players see, it doesn't reflect what we're looking in the mirror.
I think it also speaks to, the top of these organizations. There's one GM of color right now, Chris Greer, Miami Dolphins, one. There's 1 out of 32. And the ownership pool obviously isn't incredibly diverse, and you can't control that necessarily and just say, hey, these owners should change, their rate. But when you've got one GM of color and you've got a front office that is essentially built of a different color, and then you're saying, okay, when I go out there and hire a head coach, they're looking up at the org chart and saying, well, there's seems to be an optics there as well. So to me, I look at other sports, baseball, basketball. This is a far more diverse candidate pool in those sports than it is in football. To me, it might start from the top, even above coaching, and maybe trying to groom some of the young people in the NFL to not necessarily go into coaching or broadcasting, but to be a front office executive after this time as a player. And maybe that is why, and they don't have to be players. You don't need to just hire ex-players who are African-American. Maybe you go into the Ivy Leagues or you go into any school and try to find a young man or a young woman who says, I want to work in a front office. I don't necessarily want to play in the NFL, and groom them that way. There are a lot of different ways to address this, but one general manager of color to me is what sticks out. even more than the 4 head coaches.
You say the general manager. One of the things Steve Weiss has been big on is the coordinator level. You know, it's tough to become president if you can't become vice president. It's the easiest way to do it. And look at this. Mike Tomlin, coordinator for the Vikings. Ron Rivera, coordinator for the Bears and the Chargers. That's the entry point. And I think we can all agree it's a little bit messed up. Frankly, we do a segment here called Heads Up Coach, and we take the 32 coaches and we spread their faces around this table. I mean, it looks like a Jimmy Buffett concert. All right, it's just like it's vexing to me. And obviously the system is not right. And I think the GM idea, the player perspective, and certainly the coordinator thing.
Yeah.
Maybe there's going to be some changes made to that level.
Triggs, the Art Rooney II said that they had made changes last season. They're still not where they want to be. Are there changes that are going to be further made this year with the coordinators potentially?
One of the proposals that's been made or been talked about is that, you know, not only do you have to interview one minority candidate, you've got to interview one on the offensive side and on the defensive side. So let's bring in a different pool, a wider pool, to at least meet with these people. Because even the experience of interviewing, and Bieniemy is going to get mentioned a lot, and he interviewed for every team last year and every team this year, and he didn't get a job. That experience eventually can net him to the job and say, I'm going to be ready for the next time. Because I'll tell you, Ron Rivera, who's a minority hire himself, interviewed a million times before being a 2-time NFL Coach of the Year. Sometimes it takes this process to get to where you ultimately want to be.
Great points made by all. We, of course, are going to continue to follow this story and see how it evolves right here at the breakfast table. We drew straws in the morning meeting. Peter's got the short straw. It means you go first in making your picks for Championship Sunday.
Kyle said,
He wants to go.
Kyle said somebody has to set the tone.
So are you going to be you Steve Atwater for us?
This ref.
That's my man.
Mike Vrabel's used to being on the other side of these kind of things. I mean, not super used to it. He used to be a player.
Bam.